Does this make me a real YouTuber now? Whew. I didn't expect it to be... Okay, for you Midwesterners, I'm not gonna say what I was just gonna say. No, I'm not gonna give you this guy's code. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Crowley. I'm a Canon installer, YouTuber, vlogger, and I have almost exclusively been using the Canon Eos M50 for the past 9 months and 10 days. In that time, I've pretty much mastered video on this camera and grown my channel from 100 subscribers to 2,700 subscribers. Pretty much exclusively doing content on this camera. So today I wanted to talk to you about why I got this camera and why I've kept this camera and why I don't really have intentions of changing cameras, because I still think this is an amazing camera for what I do. So for basic specs, we have 4K at 24 frames per second, we have 1080p at 24, 30, and 60 frames per second, and we have 720p at 60 and 120 frames per second. We have a flip screen mic jack and dual pixel autofocus. Gotta go ahead and return the plate for the van I just sold. It is a lightweight APS-C mirrorless camera with an EVF. But that's enough about specs, because everyone already knows the specs of this camera, and what I want to talk to you about is the actual life experience and how it's been using this for making over 50 videos. I'm taking the family out, so I need to get ready and go. First of all, let's talk about the cons. I mean, there are a few cons. It's not an ideal camera. I think it's a really good camera for what I do, but there's some things that could definitely be improved on, but I think you can work around them since it is a pretty inexpensive camera. So one of the cons about the M50 is the fact that it just doesn't have that many buttons. It's not a very good layout for doing manual videos. Now, I always shoot manual, and so it can get annoying, but I mean, you can do it. All of your settings can be adjusted manually. You're not able to have a button for each setting. Another issue is that I know I said it's lightweight, but it's like very lightweight. I don't like the form factor of the M50. It's not very good for doing handheld video. Another con, of course, is the 4K limitations. I mean, everyone knows about them. You have a crop 4K, so instead of being a 1.6 crop, it's a 2.56 crop. And then also the autofocus. I mean, the autofocus is just completely unusable in 4K.
What just happened? It was holding up like it together, like see?
Broke it.
Another con is that you don't have continuous autofocus in the high frame rate mode, and, well, the fact that it is only 720p. Another con is low light performance. I mean, it's just not good. I mean, it's not horrible. It's not like how ISO performance used to be, where it's like 640 full of grain. Still sort of that 7D Mark I, just not very good ISO performance. But I mean, of course, it's usable. You can make great content even in low light with the M50, but I really do feel like you have to use a lot faster glass, and there's not really any fast native glass except the 22mm and the 32mm. And that brings me to another issue, which is the fact that, well, the entire EOS M system has a horrible native lens selection. Now, I know that makes the camera sound kind of negative, but I mean, there are a lot of positives about this camera. I mean, spec-wise, it's not as good as even some other cameras in this category, but it gives you so much and really allows you to capture high quality images. Now, how many of you noticed the little storytelling hack I just did where I was talking about the negatives in like a dark environment, and then I started talking about the positives in a light environment? Who noticed that? You see, usability is not like, I was saying the buttons were kind of a negative, but it's not all negative, because there is some positive, the fact that all of the buttons are right within reach of your one hand, even when you're using the cage. And because it is small, it makes it so that you can reach pretty much all of the on-screen buttons as well. So if you have to use any of the touchscreen buttons, they're right there. You can reach over and use them. It makes changing settings super easy. Now, without the cage, the ergonomics and the handling of this camera is questionable at best. It's not really good. It's not going to be as good as a DSLR or a mirrorless camera that has a bigger grip and more buttons. But actually, once I got the cage on this camera, it changed all of that. It gives you a sizable, comfortable grip without impeding any of your ergonomics. It actually makes the camera easier to control because your hand doesn't feel crammed around all of the buttons, but you can still reach all of them. And being able to get video-specific accessories really helps this camera as just a daily driver performer. Because I'm doing the type of videos that I am, I really appreciate another thing about this camera, and that's how simple the menus are. And I actually like the fact that when I'm trying to get to a menu item, I don't have to weed through a very deep menu. Now, I know that's specific to the type of content that I'm doing, but it's something that I actually like about the M50 and is not a complaint for me, but a congratulations. Because I like it when gear kind of gets out of the way and allows you to tell story. That's the main reason I like autofocus. About autofocus, that's probably one of the best things about this camera. You have Canon's legendary, that phrase is way overused, but legendary dual pixel autofocus. It is a fast, accurate autofocus that has a really good user interface. And another thing I like about this camera is not just the autofocus, but the fact that we have so many manual focus assists. I mean, right now, I'm in manual focus, but because you have things like focus peaking, it's on the screen right now. I can see the outlines of what's in focus. But then my favorite thing, you have a magnifying glass that you can real quick zoom into 10 times, get your focus, and then hit the record button, and you're in focus. I'm in focus right now without using autofocus, which of course for 4K, since we don't have autofocus, this camera makes it so much easier than pretty much any other Canon DSLR to get good critical focus. And one reason why I would get this camera over something like the SL2, it really helps and is one thing that I love about this camera. You know, it's kind of difficult to get like good quality light and like a soft image, soft light on your face when you have a blaring sun. Now, the biggest thing that I like about this camera is that I have it. It's not that it's the most amazing camera. It's not that it does anything like spectacularly well. I mean, it does a lot of stuff pretty good, but it doesn't do anything like spectacular. It's not something like a GH5 where, yeah, you might have bad autofocus, but the image quality is just incredible. Or something like the A7 III where it's not the most robust image quality, but it's a detailed 4K with great autofocus and a full frame sensor. It does not have anything going for it that's like specialized for this camera. But what I like about it is that I can create something amazing with it. Because it's simple but gives a great image, it allows you to focus on your stories. It's not something like a smartphone where you're sort of fighting with the lack of dynamic range, the lack of shallow depth of field, and it's not like a cheapo T3i, T2i where you're having to deal with all of these limitations. It has good enough image quality, it has good enough 1080p and 4K and 720p that you can create incredible images without having to put tons of effort into doing it. And that's what I love about this camera, is it allows you to focus on telling your stories and not get bogged down. So going back to the question in my title, is this camera good enough to be a daily driver, to be a camera that you're using all the time, creating tons of content with? And I would say without doubt, yes, this camera is great for that. And if you doubt me and say, well, you barely talked about the camera, you kind of talked about yourself and mentioned a few things, just go back and watch my videos and you will see what this camera is capable of. I don't want to make this video about the specs of this camera, but what I actually think about, my impression of the camera when I start using it. I have made so many videos with this camera. In fact, practically my entire channel, like I said at the beginning, has been built because I started making videos about this camera, because something that I did that not a lot of people did, and I don't blame them for it, was instead of getting this camera, doing a bunch of videos on it, and then moving on to the next camera, being a tech reviewer, which I like tech reviewers, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to offend anyone. But instead of being a tech reviewer, I said, what can I do to squeeze every little thing that I can out of this camera? And I have been doing that, and I have no intention of stopping anytime soon. So if you like this video, I know you probably didn't find it that helpful, but if you like this video, why don't you go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, as well as more storytelling and M50 tutorials. Thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.